So today's episode is going to be a little informational for homeowners, but also is going to be more geared toward my roofing contractors. So as somebody that does a lot of insurance work in the roofing space, I do a lot of something called attempt to repairs. I have probably a dozen videos on my YouTube about it, and I've done plenty more than that. The reason I have them on YouTube is that way I can send them to insurance carriers. It's the only way you can create a link and send that through most firewalls. What I'm going to be doing is just reviewing this video. This is one of my attempt to repairs. I'm usually talking through the whole thing, but I just want to give you a little bit more insight as far as how I do this. So one of the things you'll notice is all the tools that are sitting on top of my pitch hopper. This is most of the stuff that you're going to need when it comes to doing an attempt to repair. It's pretty minimal as far as tools go. You just want to have a low bar, something that's not a crazy bent crowbar where you don't have to pick up the shingle very much to pull the nails out. You want a roofing hammer. The roofing hammers are magnetic hatches, so it's specifically designed to be able to hold that nail for you. That way you're not having to lift the shingle, hold the nail, and then try and drive it. Because working on a roof, as you can imagine, is twice as hard as working on 2 feet standing on the ground. One of the other tools you're going to want is some kind of putty knife, something that's a nice thin piece of metal to break those shingles without being too rough. And then also you're going to want a paintbrush, something to just brush away the granules. You want to do a control shingle, meaning you want to go ahead and brush the shingle next to it, showing that the shingles aren't actively falling off. That way you can show a clear comparison before you do the work and then after you do the attempt to repair. And then lastly, grab a piece of chalk. You'll see also that I do a lot of markings above it. I want to be very specific. I want there to be no ifs, ands, and buts about what home I'm working on, what I'm doing, the claim number I go ahead and include. I usually go ahead and do the time of the day, the date, and then also I want to let them know what temperature it is outside. Why does this matter? So shingles can only be installed above 40 degrees, but if you want to show that a shingle can either be repaired or not be repaired, you want to fall within those guidelines. And if you're trying to repair a shingle when it's 32 degrees outside, an insurance company is going to have a pretty good argument as to why that shingle's cracking and it's extra brittle, probably because it's dang near freezing. So making sure you're putting all this down can just eliminate a lot of the ifs, ands, or buts, and is very straightforward as far as an insurance company goes because they are very data driven. So let's get right into it. So right here, I'm just explaining that just because you're replacing one shingle, the way the shingles are installed on the roof, they overlap each other, right? So when you are trying to remove one shingle, you actually have to remove the nails on 2 shingles above it to be able to pull that one shingle out. Again, the control of just me brushing it beforehand just to make sure there's no loose granules already. I try to go in at about a 45-degree angle with the putty knife. Just don't going straight stabbing or angle too far down. That way it doesn't actually damage it while I'm trying to separate it. If the shingle's super old, I've had them break on me before, but in this instance, it's not the case. I'm really careful. There's only one manufacturer guideline that actually says lift the shingle as needed to do a repair, but trying to stay under that 45 degree is you're gonna get a lot less pushback from an insurance company. Just showing that, again, just removing the shingles, the nails that are holding that specific shingles aren't gonna mean you can remove it. Just a little background on this one too. This was in Augusta after Hurricane Helene. So this is about a 12, 14-year-old 3-tab, so it's definitely towards the end of its lifespan, which is another reason why it's hard to repair. So I'm zooming in here. This is something to keep an eye out for. Typically, whenever you're separating shingles from each other, a lot of what can happen is something called mat transfer. So mat transfer is just going to mean a piece of the shingle on one ripped off and is attached to the other shingle. Why is this a problem? Well, as you can imagine, if you're trying to glue something down to something that's not an even surface, that hold is just not going to hold properly. So when you have a lot of mat transfer across the shingle, it makes it impossible to repair properly. So right there, I'm just highlighting it and just showing that it can happen not only on the shingle I'm removing, but where there's any adhesive strip. So it also, the shingle I removed, part of it was stuck to the shingle below it. Right here, I'm checking compatibility. This is super critical because when you're working with shingles that are older roofs, not all the new shingles are going to be able to line up exactly, be the same measurements, and you're not supposed to cut shingles out in the field, meaning out in the middle of a slope, because it's not a manufacturer edge, meaning it can definitely lead to leaks down the road. So right here, I'm just seeing if the adhesive strip's going to line up. This one was actually pretty compatible. 3 tabs for the most part are pretty similar across the board. The 20 and 25 year 3 tabs, the thickness is going to be a little bit different, but it's a pretty similar product, which is all I'm going to show here. Make sure both edges are lined up properly. I'm going to hold for a second there just to show you the clearance I actually have to lift up the shingle to be able to actually drive the nail down, because you're going to have to lift up the shingle a little bit higher to drive the nail down flush, because what you don't want to do is try to not pick up the shingle as much and drive that thing at a 45-degree angle. That's not going to allow it to seal back properly, and it's also just not going to hold the product down with a nice flush surface. One thing I will note too is there's definitely nothing wrong with using the old nails as long as they're correct size and everything and they're not completely rusted out, because the idea of this is proving that it either can or can't be repaired. If it can be repaired, then what you're doing should hold it regardless. So I'm all finished up at this point. I'm just going to highlight, which is a little bit harder to see on these gray shingles, but I am going to brush it one more time just to show any loose granules that may have started to fall off or just be resting on the shingle after I had to lift it up. So as you can see, there's kind of a crease there. It's a little bit tough to tell, but due to it creasing and then also due to the mat transfer, these are both reasons why it would fail an attempt to repair, because it no longer can seal properly. So this is something we sent into the insurance carrier and was able to flip this from about a 4 square repair to an entire roof replacement for this homeowner. So they were very, very happy, as you can imagine. And ultimately the insurance company did the right thing. Everybody's better protected in the end. So I hope that helps when it comes to being a roofing contractor and dealing with this process. This is usually something that's going to go on towards the end of the insurance process, meaning if you have the insurance adjuster come out, they write a repair, they're going to fight you that it doesn't need a full replacement. That's when these videos come into play. When a roof is more towards the end of its lifespan, you do an attempt to repair to prove as a contractor that you can't actually fix this roof in and of its entirety. And when that's the case, I just want to say to my contractors that look at 5 or 6 damaged shingles on a roof and try to fight it this way, that is not the way we do things. That's asking for trouble. You're going to delay the process, and ultimately that's not what insurance is for. It's when you have sporadic damage all across the entire roof and it also happens to be an older roof, that's when things like this are going to come into play, because only certain adjusters are really only going to push back against you if you already have sporadic damage, if it's a little bit of a newer roof. So definitely some extra things to keep in mind. Hope this video helps. Thanks for watching, guys.